Okay. So we'll continue. We were on text number 6, right?
Yes.
So we heard about the gopis embracing one another because they found they had some common emotions. So this is an indication how there are actually groups there among the gopis, that they have their groups. And I did speak something about those groups yesterday. I think I touched on it briefly. I mentioned about who some of the gopis were in their previous lives. Do you remember? I spoke, right? Right, the Shutichari gopis and the sages from the Dandakaranya forest. And so naturally they would be like groups of gopis. But you have also different groups. You have, for example, we heard today also, and that we were speaking, that some of the gopis were elderly, and they were more influenced by Vatsalya prem rather than by conjugal Madhurya prem. You know, they were not influenced by Cupid, but they were influenced by the mood of being motherly to Krishna. Their prema was in Vatsalya ras. So the elderly gopis, like Mother Yashoda. Now Mother Yashoda, she's also prema bhakta, but she's in the mood of mother. It's different from the gopis. So in the same way, there are other ladies like that. There are other gopis also who share that mood of Mother Yashoda. Mother Yashoda, she has her associates, you know, the other ladies, little elderly ladies, they will associate with Mother Yashoda. We'll be together and help each other. So that's one way in which we can classify the gopis, that you have the gopis who are in Vatsalya ras, but you've got other gopis who are more in what is called Anurakta. They have this loving feeling for Krishna. It's more influenced by Cupid or love. But among these gopis, there's also differences. Some of the gopis are married and some are not. And now that's an interesting thing. Some of the gopis are married women. Some of the ladies may even be from the city. They're not necessarily all from Vrindavan. They can be from other places. But generally we're speaking about the gopis, the cowherd ladies. So some are married and some are not. And those who are unmarried, then there will be different levels of perfection. Some of the gopis, for example, they'll be at the level of sadhakas. Sadhakas, you know, in a sense, we're also sadhakas. We're trying to perfect our devotional service. And other gopis, they will be siddhas. They will be already perfected souls. There will be nitya siddhas, for example, eternally perfect gopis who come from the spiritual world to take part in Krishna's pastimes. And then there's another way in which one can get perfection, kripa siddha. Kripa siddha, mercy, causeless mercy, one can get perfection. And then the other process, of course, is sadhana siddha. So the sadhakas, they're doing their sadhana to become perfect. And in the stage of sadhana, there will be different levels of devotees, different levels of advancement. Some will be at the level of kanishta, some will be at the level of madhyam, and some will be at the level of uttama. And among the gopis, some will be Proda. Just like in Navadvip, we have the deity of Prodamaya. Proda generally means elderly. So some of the gopis, their seniority is due to their elderly age. And some are Mukhya. Mukhya means like they're more in the leadership position. They're recognized as being authoritative. Madhyam, intermediate. So we want to understand all these different levels and different groups of gopis. Many, many, many gopis. And so many different levels and so many different groups. And so we're just trying to understand how to be the servant of a very small servant in some group of the gopis. And these different gopis, they all have their different particular services for Lord Krishna. I remember some years ago, there was a Maharaji. She was actually from South Africa, and she had cancer, terminal cancer, and she was leaving her body. And she was a very qualified artist, very expert artist. So she was preparing, she was in Vrindavan. She'd taken a house there in Vrindavan to finish her life. And she was preparing herself for her spiritual position, for her situation in the spiritual world. She was envisioning that she could go to the spiritual world and she could take part in decorating Srimati Radharani, and putting on the different decorations, maybe like on the hand and on the face, the different gopi dots and these kind of things. And she was her whole meditation was for that particular service in the spiritual world. Very, of course, very, very nice, very exalted. She was a very advanced devotee. And many senior devotees, very senior Vaishnavas used to go and talk to her and spend time with her and prepare her and encourage her for going back to Godhead. You know, very senior, she was actually a disciple of His Holiness Giriraj Swami, and Tamal Kṛṣṇa Goswami used to talk to her, and Govinda Maharaj, Bhakti Vrinda Govinda Maharaj, and like that, different very, very senior devotees, they would go and talk to her, and they would encourage her in her meditation and in her endeavor to enter into the spiritual world, to take up this service as a gopi in the spiritual world. Of course, there are many services there. Making garlands for Krishna as well. We were talking about the Vajayanti garland, so these garlands have to be made. You have to collect the flowers. The flowers should be different colors, and so on. And then cooking also. If you read the book, there's a book written by His Grace Satyaraj Prabhu, and he writes about the life of three great Vaishnava saints, about Shamananda and Srinivasacharya and Narottam Das. So he described about Shamananda Pandit, how Shamananda Pandit, when he was staying in Vrindavan at the Gurukul of Jiva Goswami, he was, every day was cleaning the Rasasthala, the place where the gopis and Krishna danced Rasa Leela. Every day he would go there and sweep it and clean it. And one day he found an ankle bracelet. And it was a very, very beautiful ankle bracelet. He didn't know whose it was. And then some gopis, one lady came, young lady came, asking him, did you find a bracelet? Did you find an ankle bracelet? My mistress has lost her ankle bracelet. So Shamananda actually, when he gave the ankle bracelet, this was actually Radharani who was coming to collect the ankle bracelet, or it was a servant of Radharani coming to collect the ankle bracelet for Srimati Radharani. So it said that Shyamananda, he used to do service for Radha and Krishna in his meditation. Not only in his he would actually, well, in his meditation, yeah, it was in his meditation. In his meditation, he was cooking the milk, because in Goloka Vrindavan, there's a lot of milk, and every day the milk has to be boiled. You have to boil the milk and then cook the milk down to make milk sweets and churn it into sometimes butter and things. So he would be cooking milk every day. But cooking milk is not an easy task when you don't have gas. When you're just using wood fires or gobar fires, it gets very hot. And he would be cooking the milk in his meditation, and his hands got all burned. His hands were all burned. But people never saw him do any cooking. The meditation was all done in his mind. In this way, he was taking part in the eternal pastimes of the divine couple, cooking milk in Goloka Vrindavan. And we see these kind of things also, Rupa Goswami, how he was also meditating on the pastimes of Radha and Kṛṣṇa. That one time he was meditating on Radha and Krishna's pastimes when one deformed Brahmana was walking past. And the deformed Brahmana took offense from Rupa Goswami's laughing. He thought Rupa Goswami was laughing at him. And because of that, Rupa Goswami was not able to enter back into his meditation onto the pastimes of the Lord. And Rupa Goswami wondered what had happened, why he couldn't enter into the Lord's pastimes anymore. And then he was asked by Sanatana Goswami, did you offend anybody? So Rupa Goswami thought about it. No, I didn't offend anybody. I haven't. But then he remembered how this Brahmana had come past. And he thought, maybe this Brahmana somehow took offense from me. And so he found the Brahmana, and sure enough, the Brahmana admitted that, yes, I was offended, that you were laughing at me. But Rupa Goswami then explained to him, no, I was not laughing at you. I was in meditation on the pastimes of the Lord. And I was seeing how Krishna was splashing Radharani with the water, and they were having fun, and I was laughing, I was enjoying their pastime. And so then the Brahmin understood, and so Rupa Goswami fell at his feet and begged forgiveness, and the Brahmana also forgave him. And in this way Rupa Goswami could then continue his meditation. So this is how these great devotees would pass their time, meditating, and their minds would be absorbed in the transcendental pastimes of Lord Krishna. Although they were in Chaitanya Lila, and after Lord Chaitanya also, but within their mind they would be meditating on pastimes going on in Vrindavan, taking place, not just Vrindavan in this world, but in Goloka Vrindavan. So there are many different groups of gopis, and these different gopis all have their different services. If you read Shivaram Swami's book, well, he has a number of books, of course, but I was thinking particularly of his book about the Venu Gita. Is it? The Venu Gita, what Gita is it? It's about Govardhan Hill. I think is it Venu Gita, where Shivaram Swami is written about it. He describes about each of the gopis and the different services which they each do. We have here in Mayapur, of course, we have the Astasakis, and each of the Astasakis, they each have their particular services for Lord Krishna, and they each have their own groups of gopis. So the service is all assigned to different groups, to different gopis who serve the Lord in all different ways. So these gopis, they embraced each other when they understood they had some common emotions, different similar experiences. They were very happy and they could embrace each other. Yes? Any comments?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, may I say something?
Please, Maharaji.
I was appreciating what a beautiful mood they have. They're not envious of others' progress or others' relationship with Krishna. They feel happy and they want to share that emotion by embracing. That mood was very beautiful. I was appreciating that mood of non-enviousness.
That's a very important point. Thank you, Maharaji, for bringing this up. The nature of the spiritual world is there is no envy. There's no bitterness or bad feelings anywhere in the spiritual world. We want to create that atmosphere by the Krishna consciousness movement. That there should not be any envy. Of course, we know Srimad Bhagavatam begins like that. Lord Krishna also speaks about it in the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, telling Arjuna, because you're not envious of me, therefore I'm speaking this knowledge to you. And similarly, Srimad Bhagavatam begins that this Srimad Bhagavatam is for those who are free of envy. So it's very important for us to give up that any envy, and that we see this wonderful feature among these pure devotees. Of course, the Gopīs, they're very, very special devotees, very great devotees. But we shouldn't just say, oh well, they're great devotees, so you can't expect me to be like that. That's not very good. We shouldn't think like that. Sometimes, sometimes devotees, we never give ourselves a chance. There was an example. One Maharaji, she was having difficulty in her marriage, and I suggested to her, I said, well, I just read about Draupadi, that there was a description of all the different things which Draupadi did for her husbands. And she had 5 husbands, but she kept them all happy. Of course, we read about this in 10th canto Srimad Bhagavatam later on, when Kṛṣṇa came to Kurukshetra with all of his wives. His wives were all very anxious to hear from Draupadi how she was so successful in keeping all 5 husbands happy. So I said to this Mataji, I said, I'll send you this list which Draupadi had, because Draupadi had so many nice ideas about how to keep her husband happy and satisfied. But after I sent it to her, she said, oh I'm not Draupadi. I'm not Draupadi, Okay, you're not Draupadi, but still, we can try, we should try to emulate these kind of activities. So similarly, the Gopīs, we're not Gopīs, but we're encouraged to follow in the footsteps of the Gopīs. We want to follow that mood of the Gopīs. Give up envy, the mood of working together with others. Very important for us. This is the basic principles of Krishna consciousness, working together without envy. All right, we'll go ahead to text number 7. Now, text number 7, we see a Gopi is going to speak. We haven't really heard from a Gopi yet. We've heard Sukadeva Goswami speaking. And the Gopis were going to speak, but then they became speechless. So now, somehow they've managed to get themselves composed again, and they're ready to speak. And they're going to speak to each other and describe topics of Krishna. And we're told that each of these verses is spoken by different Gopis, from text number 7 up to text 19. Each of the statements are given by different Gopis, they're each sharing their realization or their understanding of Lord Kṛṣṇa and the situation there in Vrindavan. All right, who would like to read text number 7 for us? Do we have some more nice chanters? Yes, go ahead. Oh, Prabhu, can't hear you, Prabhu. With your mic.
Can I repeat?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
This text 7, right?
Yes.
Sri Gopya Uchohu Aksharvatam Palamidam Naparam Vidamaha Sakya Pashun Anu Vivishayato Vayasyahe Pakatram Rajesha Sutayo Anavenu Jushatam Jairva Nipitam Anurakta Kataksha Moksham.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yes. Translation? Yes, Prabhu, translation?
Yes, Maharaj. The cowherd girl said, "Oh friends, those eyes that see the beautiful faces of the sons of Maharaj Nanda are certainly fortunate. As these two sons enter the forest, surrounded by their friends, driving the cows before them, they hold their flutes to their mouths and glance lovingly upon the residents of Vrindavan. For those who have eyes, they think there is no greater object of vision."
All right, thank you, Prabhu. For those who have eyes, we think there is no greater object of vision, right? Akshanvatam, of those who have eyes. Akshamvatam phalam, the fruit, the fruit of these eyes. It should be simply to see Kṛṣṇa. There's nothing worth seeing more than Kṛṣṇa. Maybe you remember Lord Kṛṣṇa was coming from Vrindavan, going to Mathura with Akrura. And there's that place where Lord Kṛṣṇa takes bath. Is it Akrura Ghat? Is that right? Is it Akrura Ghat? Just on the way to Mathura, where Lord Kṛṣṇa takes his bath with Balaram?
Yes, Maharaj.
Yes, Maharaj.
And then Akrura goes and takes his bath. And what does Akrura see when he goes to take bath? Do you remember?
He sees Lord Vishnu and Ananta in the Yamuna.
Yes. And when he comes back, then Lord Kṛṣṇa says to him, he says to Akrura, "Did you see something wonderful there?" He could see the look on Akrura's face. You know, Akrura comes back after taking his bath, and Lord Kṛṣṇa says to Akrura, "Did you see something wonderful there, Akrura?" And what does Akrura say? You know, it's a interesting incident which I like to remember. Actually, at one point we had artists in the Back to Godhead magazine, and they used to do drawings of these different incidents, and they had beautiful cartoons of these different incidents, and they had a beautiful line drawing of Akrura coming out of taking his bath and coming to Kṛṣṇa and Balaram, and Lord Kṛṣṇa asks him, "Have you seen something wonderful there, Akrura?" And Akrura says to Lord Kṛṣṇa, "My Lord, having seen you, then there's nothing more wonderful to see. One who has seen you, they've seen everything which is wonderful on the land, in the sky, in the water, everywhere. If we have seen you, then we have seen everything which is wonderful to see." So like that, the perfection of the eyes is to see Lord Kṛṣṇa. So the cowherd ladies, these cowherd girls, they're describing like this. They've seen the beautiful faces of the sons of Maharaj Nanda. Now, is Balaram actually the son of Maharaj Nanda? What is the situation? Is Balaram also the son of Maharaj Nanda?
No, Maharaj.
So why are you saying like this? Why the Gopis are saying the sons of Maharaj Nanda?
Maharaj, can I say?
Yes, please, Maharaji.
Actually, we saw in the earlier chapters that Nanda Maharaj and Vasudeva are stepbrothers. Their father, they are stepbrothers. So, in that sense, generally the brother's son is also taken as their own. They also consider them as sons. So, in that sense, in that relationship, Balaram is also Nanda's son. Because Nanda being the stepbrother of Vasudeva.
Right, yeah. Okay. And it's also mentioned, if you look in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's mentioned in chapter 5, text 27. There, Sukadeva Goswami says that the mother and father, Yashoda and Nanda, called out to Balarama and blessed him. Oh no, that's the other text. That's the other reference. There's two references in the Bhagavatam. First of all, it's chapter 5, text 27. There, Vasudeva is saying, he's telling Nanda Maharaj that you should think of my son Balaram as if he were as if you were his father, because Vasudev's in jail. Vasudev's in jail with Devaki. They're the prisoners of Kṛṣṇa. But Nanda Maharaj is bringing up Balarama. He's there, Rohini's there in the home of Nanda Maharaj. And we remember also at the birth ceremony of Lord Kṛṣṇa, Nanda Maharaj gave beautiful saris and ornaments to Rohini also. He didn't neglect her. He took care of her. And he also took care of Lord Balaram, who was the child of, he appeared from the womb of Rohini. Although actually originally he was in the womb of Devaki, but he transferred to the womb of Rohini, and so he took birth in the home of Nanda Maharaj. So Vasudeva told Nanda Maharaj to think of Balaram as if he were your son. And then later on also in chapter 65, well, that's way on in 10th Canto, chapter 65, you've got a text there where Sukadeva Goswami says that the mother and father, Yashoda and Nanda, called out to Balarama and blessed him. So Balarama was commonly known as Nanda Maharaj's son. Of course, he wasn't the actual seminal son like that, but because he was brought up for so many years there in the home of Nanda Maharaj, it was like that up until they went to Mathura at the age of, I think it was 11, when Kṛṣṇa went to Mathura for the wrestling match. That time Balarama also went with him. So they were always together. So the Gopis described him like that. But the Acharyas point out there's a hidden meaning also, that the hidden meaning is that actually it's only Kṛṣṇa playing the flute, that it's not actually Balarama also playing the flute, but it's actually only Kṛṣṇa playing the flute, and it's the one face, it's not the two faces, but, Anyway, the Acharyas, they can read so many different meanings and different understandings into these verses. But here in our translation, which is given by Srila Prabhupada and quoted from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's described, the two sons entered the forest surrounded by their friends, and they held their flutes to their mouths and glanced lovingly upon the residents of Vrindavan. So this is Lord Kṛṣṇa entering the forest of Vrindavan, glancing lovingly upon the residents of Vrindavan. We're given a quote here by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He's commented as follows: the Gopis mean to say, "O friends, if you simply remain in the shackles of family life in this material world, what will you ever get to see? The Creator has granted us these eyes, so let us see the most wonderful thing there is to see, Kṛṣṇa." And we find this kind of topic brought up also in Gopi Gita later on. In Gopi Gita you have the verse where the Gopis, they say Lord Brahma was stupid, that he was this stupid creator, that he made these eyes which blink, so we cannot see Kṛṣṇa all the time. So the Gopis, they very much desired to be absorbed in seeing Lord Kṛṣṇa. And they want to see Kṛṣṇa all the time. And they say this, the purpose of these eyes is they're just meant for seeing Kṛṣṇa. They're not meant for anything else. Just the shackles of family life, this is the material world. That the eyes are not meant for that. The eyes are meant for seeing the beauty. And we have also the nice verse about going to see Kṛṣṇa. Rupa Goswami quotes that verse about if you still desire to enjoy family, society and friends, then do not look on that boy Govinda who's standing in a threefold bending form playing the flute on the banks of the Yamuna. Because if you see Govinda, then you'll never want to again enjoy family, society and friends. So in this way Rupa Goswami glorifies seeing Kṛṣṇa, appreciating the beauty of Kṛṣṇa, using the eyes to see that wonderful form of Kṛṣṇa.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhu?
Maharaj, that means that in the spiritual world they won't blink the eyes?
In the spiritual world they won't blink. Well, that's probably true, Prabhu, because certainly it's not Brahma who's the creator there. We don't know who it's... we don't hear about in the spiritual world the Gopis are cursing anybody for creating the eyes. But we hear about it in this world. We hear that Lord Brahma hasn't done a very good job here. That's the point. We have to... Whether or not we blink in the spiritual world, that's an interesting thing. Okay, the Gopis were aware that their mothers or other elder persons might hear their romantic words and disapprove. And thus they said, Akshamvatam phalam. To see Kṛṣṇa is the goal for all persons and not simply ourselves. In other words, the Gopis indicated that since Kṛṣṇa is the supreme object of love for everyone, why couldn't they also love him in spiritual ecstasy? So, very meaningful, very powerful statements given here. Generally, we do like to see, we enjoy looking and seeing things. We give a lot of importance to looking and being seen. There are other senses, of course, hearing, touching, smelling, tasting, but seeing is certainly one of the very prominent forces of satisfying the senses. So the Gopis talk about being able to see Kṛṣṇa. The Gopis are saying, those eyes which see Kṛṣṇa are very fortunate. You see Nanda Maharaj's son, you're very fortunate. Well, don't the Gopis get to see Kṛṣṇa? Well, they get to see them go off in the morning. They get to see them go off in the morning into the forest. But that's it. They see them leave. And then they wait anxiously for them to come home in the evening. And they're waiting in the evening when the cows start. They hear the cows coming. There'll be some sound as they come, because they blow their trumpets and blow their horns. They have different instruments which they take with them. And the cows also come. So the dust will be kicked up. As the cows come to the village, everyone knows, oh, they're coming home, Kṛṣṇa's coming home, and everyone will be anxious, and they'll all come out to see Kṛṣṇa, and all the cowherd boys, that they're coming home. So this is the pleasure of the spiritual world, seeing the Lord. And it's like a taste. We want to actually taste the beauty of Kṛṣṇa. How to taste the beauty of Kṛṣṇa? By seeing Kṛṣṇa. We should also want to see Kṛṣṇa. Prabhupada explains like that, right? We should have that desire that we want to see Kṛṣṇa. Prabhupada, I was just reading, Prabhupada was telling the story about the thief who heard that Kṛṣṇa had many jewels. And we heard that Kṛṣṇa, his mother decorates him in many ornaments and jewels. So the thief thought, oh, I'll go there and find Kṛṣṇa, and I'll get his jewels. I'll get him to give me some of the jewels. And so the thief went there off to Vrindavan, and because he was desiring to see Kṛṣṇa, he went there and he was able to meet Kṛṣṇa. Kṛṣṇa actually appeared to him. And he was talking to Kṛṣṇa and making friends with Kṛṣṇa. But all the while his intention was he wants to get Kṛṣṇa's jewels. He wants to get his ornaments from him. So he asked Kṛṣṇa, so can I have some of your ornaments? But then Kṛṣṇa understood his mind, and Kṛṣṇa said to him, oh, no, I cannot give you my ornaments. My mother will be angry. My mother gave me these. And so then the thief was a little distressed. He thought, I have to try another approach. And so he was trying, and finally, then he was asking Kṛṣṇa, and Kṛṣṇa finally agreed, all right, you can have everything, take every... And at that time, then the thief surrendered and became a pure devotee of Kṛṣṇa and took shelter of Lord Kṛṣṇa. And so Prabhupada said, even you want to steal from Kṛṣṇa, you should want to see Kṛṣṇa. You should have that desire to see Kṛṣṇa. So the Gopis also, they also want to see Kṛṣṇa. But they have a little problem. One of the problems is they're a little afraid to go close to Kṛṣṇa because they're shy. They have their mothers-in-laws and sisters-in-laws, so they have to be careful. And they don't want to just walk up to Kṛṣṇa, and they want to, they're chaste ladies. So they're very careful about how they approach Kṛṣṇa. Of course, the face of Kṛṣṇa gives bliss to everyone in the Vrindavan forest, even the birds and the beasts. What to speak of the Gopis? But the Gopis say, we're unlucky. We don't get any bliss because we have to stay at home. We have to stay far away from Kṛṣṇa. We're very unfortunate. These other people who are in the forest, the different animals and so on, they get to see Kṛṣṇa. They get to go close to Kṛṣṇa. We don't get to see Kṛṣṇa hardly at all. So we're very unfortunate. So the Gopis have that quality, shyness and steadiness. So in this way, they can actually taste something of the ecstasy of seeing Kṛṣṇa when they hear the sound of Kṛṣṇa's flute. That sound of the flute of Kṛṣṇa enters their heart and it awakens their remembrance of Kṛṣṇa. So seeing Kṛṣṇa, that is what we want to actually desire. But the gopis say, yes, let us see, let us touch, hear, and smell him. But then they say, how is it possible? We're so shy. How is it possible we can do that? And if Kṛṣṇa actually sees you, if he sees you from a distance, then he may release the arrow of his glance. He may release the arrow of his glance and fire it at you. Right? The gopis are all attracted to him, and they're looking at him, and then Kṛṣṇa sees the gopi, and Kṛṣṇa releases the arrow of his glance. And when that arrow of his glance, when it strikes the gopi, then the gopi will become so agitated with love that they will forget their shyness and control. And then they will look without shyness on Kṛṣṇa's face. So that's how it happens. The gopis have to look at Kṛṣṇa, and they have to get the glance. When Kṛṣṇa glances at them, that glance from Kṛṣṇa will release, that will give them so much agitation. It will agitate their love so much that they'll give up their shyness, and then they will look at Kṛṣṇa on his face without any shyness at all, without any reluctance. All right, we'll go ahead. Text number 8. Who's going to read?
Can I read, Maharaj?
Please, Maharaji.
Chuta pravala barhasta bhagotpalabja mala nuprukta paridhana vichitra veshau madhye virejatur alam pashupala goshthyam ranghe geta natavarau pachagayamanau.
Yes. Translation.
Dressed in a charming variety of garments upon which their garlands rest, and decorating themselves with peacock feathers, lotuses, lilies, newly grown mango sprouts, and clusters of flower buds, Kṛṣṇa and Balaram shine forth magnificently among the assembly of cowherd boys. They look just like the best of dancers, appearing on a dramatic stage, and sometimes they sing.
Yes, this is also a very interesting verse. The gopis may be worried about, well, how will we deal with disgrace? You know, it will be disgraceful for us if we're seen looking at Kṛṣṇa. We shouldn't go. But the other gopis said, no, we should go anyway. But then gopis said, anyway, Kṛṣṇa's going with Balaram. So we cannot, our motive will never be successful because Lord Kṛṣṇa's with Balaram. We cannot get Kṛṣṇa on his own. But from far off, through the leaves of creepers, we will taste the nectar of his beauty and song and see him dance. In other words, the gopis, they want to see Kṛṣṇa from a distance. They want to see him in the forest. They want to see Kṛṣṇa through the different leaves and creepers and branches and trees. And they want to see how Kṛṣṇa is singing and dancing. And said, then after we see him, then we can quickly go home. So this is the idea. This is the idea of the gopis here. They just want to see the best of dancers appearing on a dramatic stage. And then we have this amazing description of Lord Kṛṣṇa, how he decorates himself with charming variety of garments upon which their garlands rest, and decorating themselves with peacock feathers, lotuses, lilies, new-grown mango sprouts, and clusters of flower buds. So in this way, Kṛṣṇa and Balaram shine forth magnificently among the assembly of cowherd boys. So it's so wonderful. They, very simple decoration. Everything's provided by nature. Tender mango leaves and bunches of flowers in the hair, and then the lotus buds in the right hand, and around his neck the garland, and the cloth also red, black and yellow, very colorful. Just like if you go to see some big movie star, maybe they have these big shows, the different artists come. I remember one time we had this one lady come to Hong Kong. She was doing, we arranged a program, fundraising for a Hong Kong temple. And we brought, it was, what was her name? Sister of Lata Mangeshkar.
Asha Bhosle.
Asha Bhosle, that's right. Yes, thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, but Sister Asha Bhosle, she came there to Hong Kong to do a program. And so, she's a very big name, brought a lot of people who came to hear her. But the amazing thing was, when she was singing, how many different times she changed, different saris she put on. Practically every song, a different sari, It's really amazing, So here we have Kṛṣṇa and Balaram, they're in the forest. And, they're cowherd people, they're simple people. And with all the cowherd people, village people, and how they dress. They don't have expensive jewelry. When people get married, they have to have all this jewelry, so much jewelry has to be there, and everything will be very, very costly. And here's Lord Kṛṣṇa, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with Lord Balaram, his own expansion. And how are they dressed? It's all the gifts of nature. Mango leaves and bunches of flowers in the hair, and lotus and lily flowers. Not costly items. Very different. This is the mood of Vrindavan. This is the beauty of Vrindavan. That it's so simple, but at the same time it's so pleasing. So Lord Kṛṣṇa and Lord Balaram, they're there with all the cowherd boys, and they're singing and dancing, and everyone's pleased. They all appreciate the singing of others, and they praise each other. They're happy. They praise each other. Lord Kṛṣṇa will say to them, no one can sing like us. You're just insignificant cowherd boys. What can you do? You can't do, you don't sing much. In this way, Lord Kṛṣṇa will inspire the other cowherd boys that they should sing, take part in this. So this is the beauty of Vrindavan Leela. It is so natural and simple, very different from Dwarka and Mathura, where it's more opulent. And here we see Lord Kṛṣṇa also as a cowherd boy. He's enjoying intimacy, loving relationships, singing and dancing with all of his friends. And the Gopīs, they want to see this. Oh, they love to see this, because they don't get to see this. It's only done in the forest. Okay, we'll go on. Text number 9.
Can we read?
Yes.
Okay, Nashimita, you go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu.
No. Wait. Number 9. Number 9.
Okay, Prabhu, please you go ahead, Prabhu.
Okay, what's number 9, Maharaj?
Yes, number 9.
Kimacharad ayam kushalam sma venuho Damodaradhara sudamapi gopikanam Bhungte swayam yadavashishtarasam hridinyo Hrishyatvacho shrunu mumucho taravo yataryaha.
Wow, sure, very nice.
Thank you, Maharaj. My dear Gopis, what auspicious activities must the flute have performed to enjoy the nectar of Krishna's lips independently and leave only a taste for us, Gopis, for whom that nectar is actually meant? The forefathers of the flute, the bamboo trees, shed tears of pleasure. His mother, the river on whose bank the bamboo was born, feels jubilation, and therefore her blooming lotus flower are standing like hair on her body. Thank you.
Oh, yes, right. So this is very interesting. We're hearing more about the flute. What auspicious activities must this flute have performed to enjoy the nectar of Lord Krishna's lips and leave only a taste for us Gopis? So the flute is described, there are different words for flute. We know there's Murli and Vamsi, and here we have Venu. So Venu, when the word Venu is used, this is masculine gender. But other terms like Murli and Vamsi, they're feminine. So the Gopis are, you know, they feel this is outrageous, this is not proper. That this flute is of masculine gender, but he's enjoying the nectar of Lord Krishna's lips. And the Gopis say, that nectar was actually meant for us. Right? The nectar of his lips was actually meant for us. Krishna is a Gopa, and we're the Gopis. So we're the ones who are meant to enjoy that nectar from his lips. What audacity this flute has got, that he's taking all the nectar, and practically there's no remnants, although here it says leaving some remnant, but elsewhere they say no remnants, practically no remnant, leave only a taste for us Gopis, for whom that nectar is actually meant. And then the forefathers of the flute, the forefathers meaning the bamboo trees, because the flute is a bamboo flute, so it's made from the bamboo trees. So the bamboo trees, they shed tears of pleasure. They're thinking, oh, this bamboo flute has become the flute of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's enjoying, he's doing service for the Lord. They feel so proud that this bamboo flute, their relative, has taken on this wonderful service for the pleasure of Lord Krishna. So the trees are there, and they're shedding tears of pleasure. Their tears of pleasure are there in the form of the sap, which flows from the trees. So the trees are related to the flute. And also the rivers are also related to the flute. Now the rivers are female, so they're friends of the flute. The trees are male, they're like male friends. But the Gopis say the flute, the rivers, and the trees are all our enemies. The gopis are not happy with the flute. They like to take away the flute from Kṛṣṇa, and sometimes they do it. Sometimes they have the pastime where they will take the flute from Kṛṣṇa and they will hide it. They won't give it to Kṛṣṇa. It's it's a interesting pastime. So the flute has created a problem for the gopis, causing an ocean of disgrace. And that's described in this verse. So what piety did the flute do? First of all, we said it's an inanimate object. It's just a dead bamboo flute. But because it's touched by the lips of Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa can bring the inanimate object to life. So he has life. But what piety has he done? And what did it? Why should he be Kṛṣṇa's wife? It took birth as an inanimate object. It was like a low birth, right? That's a low birth, just to be an inanimate object. It means you have no pious activities, very low-born. But somehow this flute gets the nectar from Lord Kṛṣṇa's lips. We cannot tolerate this, said the gopis. This is just, it's just not right. It should be our gopis, it should be the gopis who have the right to taste that nectar. So the enjoyment, and then they say also, this enjoyment is done in an unmarried status, utterly alone, by thievery. The flute announces itself to be the real owner of that treasure. What does the flute do? Blowing air. Just by blowing air. But this is not just regular air which is blowing. This is the sound of enjoyment that the flute gets by associating with Kṛṣṇa. And we have to keep hearing that sound. The flute enjoys, he's enjoying that association with Kṛṣṇa. And there's nothing left for us, practically not even a morsel. So this is the audacity of the flute. So this is why the gopis are really not happy with the flute. The gopis say, those who have not performed pious acts act in the same way. They didn't do any piety, so they do these things like that. Because the rivers see the flute enjoying the nectar of his lips, they become happy. And their happiness is shown, the happiness of the river is shown by the lotuses, the blooming lotuses. And they stand like the hair, like hairs on the body standing on end. In the same way the lotuses are standing out of the water in happiness, in pride, at seeing the flute enjoying the nectar from the lips of Kṛṣṇa. And the trees pour out their honey, and they seem to weep in joy. Just like devotees, when they hear the glories of Kṛṣṇa, sometimes they will also shed tears, and their hairs will stand on end. So the sound of Kṛṣṇa's flute affects also the rivers and trees in a similar manner. It awakens the bhava, awakens the ecstasy. So the gopis think, we should get that flute. We should hide the flute. Where can we hide it? It does not. We don't want it. We don't want that flute to get all the nectar of Kṛṣṇa's lips. So this is sanchari bhav, and this is the sanchari bhav of envy, which is manifested in the gopis. So we were speaking about envy, and we were saying there's no envy in the spiritual world. But this is a very, very special example of envy, between Kṛṣṇa and the Gopīs, that the Gopīs have envy towards the flute, that flute is taking all the nectar from Kṛṣṇa's lips. So we want to hide that flute away from Kṛṣṇa. And sometimes the Gopīs even, they'll hide it in their hair. And the Gopīs have big braids of hair, and they can hide the flute there in their hair. Kṛṣṇa's very anxious. Where's my flute? He wants his flute. It's very dear to Kṛṣṇa. In the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, it tells about how Gopkumar went to Vaikuntha and Dwarka, and in Dwarka he met Lord Kṛṣṇa there in Dwarka. And when Gopkumar came in the dress of a cowherd boy, and he had a flute, and when Kṛṣṇa, who is there in Dwarka, when he sees Gopkumar in the dress of a cowherd boy with a flute, then Kṛṣṇa is really attracted. It really awakens something to him. Because Kṛṣṇa had gone away to go to Dwarka, he has to be a different person in Dwarka. He cannot be a cowherd boy, and he cannot play the flute. It's a whole different mood in Dwarka. But it's still Kṛṣṇa. And Kṛṣṇa comes to Dwarka. And when he sees Gopkumar in this cowherd boy dress with the flute, then Kṛṣṇa is very attracted, and he gets the flute from Gopkumar, and Kṛṣṇa begins to play the flute, and he becomes overwhelmed. It's ecstasy for Kṛṣṇa. But Kṛṣṇa left the mood of Vrindavan behind to go to Dwarka. Of course, that's Kṛṣṇa's Vasudeva Kṛṣṇa and Shamsundar Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa's expansion. Shamsundar Kṛṣṇa is always there in Vrindavan, and Vasudeva Kṛṣṇa is there in Dwarka. So we say Kṛṣṇa is perfect in Dwarka, he's more perfect in Mathura, and he is most perfect in Vrindavan. So we're hearing about Kṛṣṇa in his most perfect form as he presents himself to the Gopīs. Okay, are there any questions?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, may I ask a question, Maharaj?
Please do, Maharaji.
Maharaj, I had this understanding that inanimate objects generally relate to the Lord in Shantarasa, but here we see the rivers are embracing the Lord with the waves in a conjugal mood, and the flute. So how do I understand it correctly, Maharaj?
Well, Shantarasa is not, I don't think it's inanimate objects, but Shantarasa can be things like trees and flowers and cows and like that. They can all be in Shantarasa. There's the different birds and so on. The deer also in Vrindavan. You know, they can all be in Shantarasa, because Shantarasa means they appreciate the opulence of Kṛṣṇa. They're attracted by the beauty or the opulence of Kṛṣṇa, but they don't actually engage in any service. So that is the mood of Shantarasa. They're attracted, they like, you know, to see the beauty and to hear and like that, but they don't actually do any real service for the Lord. So inanimate objects, they don't have that kind of consciousness to be able to appreciate these things. They have to have some there has to be consciousness there before we can appreciate the beauty, before we can be attracted by Kṛṣṇa. So I don't think inanimate objects is the correct understanding of Shantaras.
Maharaj?
Yes, Prabhu?
Maharaj? Cows are also said to be in Vatsalya, you know, like cows, mother cow.
Yeah, well,
Or not?
it depends. They may be. You have to see what is the mood of the cows, right? Are they giving milk? Do they give the milk? It's like that, thinking they're providing milk as Vatsalya ras means you want to protect your child. Vatsalya ras, Nanda Maharaj, Mother, they always want to protect Kṛṣṇa. You don't see that with the cows. They can't give protection.
The cows are giving some service, no? Like giving them.
Well, then that might be dasyaras, right? That would be dasyaras, if they're giving some service. But I don't know. Do they have that mood of giving service? Usually it's the cowherd boys who have to go and take the milk from the cows. Not that the cows personally come and give it. But Kṛṣṇa and Balaram, they carry ropes with them to bind the leg of the cow so they can milk the cow.
Sometimes it's described that the milk is flowing from their udders.
Yes, sometimes, because they're so fat, they've got so much milk that the milk flows out of their udder onto the fields. Yes, sometimes described like that. But that's not the mode of service, is it? It's not like they're giving service to Kṛṣṇa. It's just that they've got so much milk that it's flowing, overflowing. But sometimes I heard also that in Goloka Vrindavan that there's no Shantaras there in Goloka Vrindavan. That everyone's in some kind of Madhurya Ras or something, or Vatsalya Ras or Sakhya Ras there in Goloka Vrindavan. Of course, well, Krishna's servants are also there. Raktak, Patrak, Badrak, they're there in Vrindavan. So Dasya Ras must be there. We do. So where the cows fit in, it could be Dasya Ras, yes, Goloka Vrindavan. Santaras is not really there in Goloka Vrindavan. It's not going to be there. The example of devotees in Santaras said the four Kumaras, the 9 Yugendras, they're Shantaras devotees. Okay? Any other questions? No? All right, then we'll go on tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, we'll finish off this chapter tomorrow. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki. Go back to Vrinda ki. Hare Kṛṣṇa.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Kṛṣṇa. Thank you, Prabhu.